back. You know, Hollywood filmmakers are always looking for new ways to lure us and you into the theater. And if bigger is better, then the very best is called Imax, which stands for Image Maximum.
Imax projects the most spectacular images from around the world on a screen the size of an 8-story building. From scaling Mount Everest to swimming with sharks to walking in space, Imax makes you feel like you're a part of the action. I know when I first saw one of these, I was left wondering how they do that. A visit to an IMAX theater is like no other movie experience available today. The images are so immense, so breathtakingly real, they defy comparison.
So huge and everything was coming right at you.
Me and him jumped. We jumped.
It's awesome.
The overwhelming size of an IMAX picture is difficult to convey on the small screen, but compare a 16mm frame used for documentaries, a 35mm frame the size of a typical feature film, a 70mm frame used for a big Hollywood blockbuster, and finally, an IMAX frame.
The goal is to give an audience a greater and greater feeling of verisimilitude, that they are in the place, that those things are happening to them, and so that you feel as if you're an astronaut or a diver.
So how did the technicians at IMAX create the largest images in movie history? By literally reinventing the tools of filmmaking. IMAX started with the largest film stock in the world and devised a way to make it 3 times bigger. How'd they do that? By turning it on its side. This is the way 70mm film is traditionally exposed. When the film is turned sideways, the width becomes the height of the picture, and the new width is 3 inches across.
We turned it around and used 3 times as much per frame, so we could get picture detail and then be able to present wide fields of view.
The only problem with this new film that traveled sideways was there weren't any cameras that could handle it. How'd the IMAX people solve that? They created the world's largest cameras, 4 times the size of a standard motion picture camera. The bulk and weight of the cameras presented unique problems for the filmmaker. But hard as it was to move them on land, it was absolutely daunting undersea. For the IMAX film Into the Deep, the camera had to work 80 feet underwater. How'd they do that?
The camera itself weighs almost 350 pounds. That's just the camera. When you put that into an underwater housing, you've got a system that weighs almost 1,800 pounds. So you can't just pick it up and, go like this with it. It won't move. And once it does start to move, it won't stop. Everything we did was done with either very closely controlled camera moves with more than one diver actually manipulating the camera.
The giant cameras posed a deadly threat when Howard's team set out to film sharks. The largest shark cage proved too small for both camera and operator. So how did film crews protect themselves?
We also wore stainless steel suits, mesh suits, that protected us from shark bites so that we could actually be outside the cage with the camera. We tethered the camera to the cage so that we could keep it in one place, and then we operated the camera outside the cage.
For the IMAX film Titanica, the camera had to film at the pitch-black bottom of the ocean 2.5 miles below the surface.
An IMAX camera has been subjected to a lot of environments, including space and everything that land can throw at it, but it had never gone this deep in the ocean before. So this was a terrific challenge to put that camera in there and make it work.
So how'd they do it? By specially outfitting 2 submarines for the cameras and then rigging them with more film lights than had ever been brought this deep before.
It certainly was an experience when you drop down through 12,500 feet of water and look out a port, and there she was. And I'll never forget the feeling, settling down, turning up the HMI lights, and it was as if a piece of the sun had been turned on 13,000 feet under the ocean, and the whole foredeck lit up, and you could see the anchor chains and the big bow anchor and the railing and the captain's cabin. You could see everything, whereas before you just see a little bit of this.
To capture the thrill of the world's largest roller coaster, IMAX technicians were asked to adapt the giant IMAX camera so it could safely ride along with a carload of paying customers. So how'd they do that? They created a miniature 50-pound camera that could be bolted right over the heads of its co-riders and withstand acceleration rates approaching 4 times the force of gravity.
4 Gs. That means 4 times the force of gravity. So what you have to think about is that your camera that ostensibly weighs 50 pounds ordinarily will now weigh 200 pounds. There's 4 bolts that hold the camera. And because we strapped the camera physically down, we could probably have gotten away with just 1 bolt. But nobody really feels very safe doing that.
When projected on a 100-foot screen, this hair-raising ride truly overwhelms the viewer. But of all the places the large IMAX cameras have been, none stirs the imagination more than the beautiful shots filmed aboard the space shuttle in Earth orbit. How'd they do that?
We train astronauts how to be cinematographers, how to be directors. I don't know about the acting part of it. Some are better than others, but they do an absolutely wonderful job of that. And of course, they're selected because they are the best learners in the world.
It's one thing to get images from inside the cabin, but IMAX was the first to ever capture the space shuttle from the outside. How? By putting a camera on a platform in parallel orbit.
The remote camera was there and operated by a team at Kennedy Space Center. So they were able to control its motion. The platform could tilt and do a number of fundamental movements. So it was able to get these beautiful views, the first ever views of the shuttle as a whole entity in orbit.
Back on Earth, projecting these truly giant reels of film creates a whole new set of problems. The metal sprockets used to pull smaller film through conventional projectors won't work here. The film is so big it would be torn apart. So how'd they do it? IMAX technicians have perfected a new system of projection that utilizes the world's largest projector. The movie footage is pulled through a labyrinth of rollers on its way to the projector. The auditorium and screen are enormous as well to convey the full IMAX experience. The perforated vinyl screen hangs from a steel scaffold over 80 feet tall. Not content to rest on their giant laurels, IMAX is adding a new system of 3D that incorporates liquid crystal lenses that open and close 48 times a second in sync with the accompanying film. The huge film, innovative technology, and exotic locations all contribute to the, well, larger-than-life feel of IMAX films, bringing ever greater spectacle even closer to the feeling of truly being there.
From our point of view, all the technology produces, when it works, and mostly it does, what it does is it makes you feel as if you are there. You are right in the middle of things.
Now, as amazing as the process we just showed you is, to truly appreciate the magnificence of those images, you need to see them projected on an 8-story screen.
You know, I've always wanted to be a rock and roll star, you know that. When I saw that Rolling Stone one, I was on that stage, man. It was great.
You were a stone.
I was a stone.
Well, you know, Pat, time is on your side.
Thank you. Time for a commercial.